Here are 50 of the strangest laws that ever existed. All of them real. Let's go. In ancient Athens, cutting down a sacred olive tree was illegal. Olive trees were believed to be a gift from the goddess Athena herself. Touch one without permission, and you could be put on trial for sacrilege. In Sparta, men were legally required to eat in communal mess halls. Eating dinner at home with your own family was not allowed. If you couldn't contribute your share of food, you lost your citizenship. Also in Sparta, bachelors were punished by law. If a man didn't marry by a certain age, he faced public humiliation and fines. Sparta needed soldiers, and soldiers needed to be born. In ancient Egypt, killing a cat, even completely by accident, was a crime. Cats were sacred to the goddess Bastet. One Roman visitor reportedly caused a riot after accidentally killing one. Egyptian priests were legally required to shave their entire bodies every few days, every hair, using bronze razors. Baldness wasn't a style choice, it was the law. Under the Code of Hammurabi in ancient Babylon, if a builder built you a house and it collapsed and killed you, the builder was executed. If it killed your son instead, the builder's son was executed too. Also, under Hammurabi's code, falsely accusing someone of a crime punishable by death meant you faced that exact same death penalty yourself. Lie about murder and you'd better be ready to die for it. In ancient Persia, lying was treated as one of the worst crimes a person could commit, worse than theft, according to their teachings. The Persians believed a single lie could curse the entire nation. In Sparta, gold and silver coins were illegal. Citizens were forced to use giant iron bars as currency instead, deliberately too heavy and bulky to steal or hide easily. Only the Roman emperor was legally allowed to wear the color purple. The dye came from crushed sea snails and cost as much as a soldier's entire yearly salary. Wear it without permission, and it counted as treason. Roman law restricted how loudly people could mourn at funerals. Professional mourners were limited by law because authorities feared overly dramatic grief would cause public disorder. In Qin Dynasty China, men caught crying without what officials considered a valid reason had their beards and eyebrows shaved off in public. The empire valued toughness above almost everything else. Also in Qin Dynasty China, your height legally determined your guilt. Anyone under about 5 feet was automatically classified as a child and exempt from criminal punishment regardless of their actual age. During China's Han Dynasty, gathering with 3 or more people just to drink alcohol without an official reason could get you fined. The emperor believed alcohol corrupted virtue. For over 1,000 years in China, foot binding was not just tradition. It was legally expected for upper-class women. Girls as young as 4 had their feet broken and bound. Families who refused faced social and sometimes legal consequences. In medieval England, it was illegal not to practice archery. Every household was legally required to own a longbow and practice for 2 hours a week. The king needed archers, and he needed them ready. Because archery was mandatory, football was banned in England multiple times across multiple centuries. Kings worried the sport was distracting men from the archery practice required for war. In 1313, English King Edward II made it illegal to wear a suit of armor inside Parliament. He was terrified nobles would show up armored and intimidate everyone into agreeing with them. That law is still officially on the books in the United Kingdom today. You are still technically not allowed to wear armor in the Houses of Parliament. Medieval English law required every village to own a set of public stocks. If your village didn't have one, it wasn't legally considered a village. It was downgraded to a mere hamlet. In 1571, English Parliament passed a law forcing all commoners to wear a wool cap every Sunday and holiday. It wasn't about fashion, it was about boosting the struggling wool industry. That law eventually got repealed, but people had grown so used to the caps that they kept wearing them anyway. This is genuinely where the flat cap came from. In medieval Europe, trial by water was a legally accepted method for determining guilt. Suspected witches were thrown into rivers, float, and you were guilty, sentenced to execution. Sink, and you were innocent, assuming you didn't drown first. Medieval courts also used trial by hot iron. The accused had to hold or walk on burning metal. If your wound healed cleanly within days, God had judged you innocent. In Plymouth Colony, 1634, Puritan law banned commoners from wearing lace, silver thread, or gold thread on their clothing. Vanity was considered a moral threat to the entire colony. In England, a 1656 proposal would have made eating mince pies during Christmas a criminal offense. The law never officially passed, but Christmas celebrations themselves were heavily restricted under Puritan rule. Under English law dating back centuries, the king or queen technically owns every whale, dolphin, and sturgeon caught within 3 miles of the coast. If you catch one, it's legally the monarch's property. In ancient Sparta, newborns were examined by government officials. Babies considered too weak or deformed were left on a mountainside to die. This wasn't punishment, it was official state policy. In ancient Rome, left-handedness was treated with deep suspicion. Left-handed soldiers were often forced to train using their right hand. Being left-handed could limit your entire career. Roman law under the 12 Tables stated that anyone caught harvesting another person's grain field could legally be sacrificed to the goddess Ceres. Stealing crops wasn't just theft, it was sacrilege. In ancient Rome, parricide, killing a parent, came with one of history's strangest punishments. The guilty person was sewn into a leather sack with a viper, a dog, and a rooster, then thrown into the river alive. Roman senators were legally forbidden from owning large trading ships. The government wanted its elite focused entirely on politics, not business. Many got around it by using relatives as owners instead. Only Roman senators were legally allowed to wear a purple stripe on their toga. Regular citizens had to settle for plain white, no exceptions. Roman women legally couldn't wear more than half an ounce of gold jewelry or ride in a carriage within 1 mile of the city, unless they were attending a religious festival. Under the Assyrian Code, around 1075 BC, only honorable women were legally allowed to wear a veil in public. If a slave or servant was caught wearing one, the punishment included 50 lashes followed by execution. In ancient Greece, women were legally banned from watching the Olympic Games. Getting caught could mean being thrown off a cliff. Only one priestess, dedicated to the goddess Demeter, was exempt. Draco, Athens' first lawmaker around 621 BC, made the death penalty the punishment for almost everything: murder, theft, even stealing a single cabbage. His laws were so harsh that draconian still means exactly that today. During Japan's Edo period, a law called Kiri Sute Gomen gave samurai the legal right to kill any commoner on the spot if they felt disrespected. This law stood for centuries before finally being abolished. In ancient India, priests were legally required to bathe multiple times every single day. Ritual purity wasn't optional. It was a binding religious and civil duty. Under Hammurabi's code, a nun caught entering or operating a tavern in Babylon was burned alive. Class and religious purity were enforced with brutal consistency. In medieval Venice, prostitution was technically tolerated by law, but regulated so strictly that women in the trade were required to wear specific clothing markers so they could be identified at a glance. In colonial Spanish territories, laws required black women to wear a specific headscarf, originally intended to mark and shame their social status. Many women defiantly turned it into a fashion statement instead. Under Roman Emperor Vespasian, public urinals were taxed because tanners and launderers legally needed the urine for their work. This is where the phrase, "money doesn't stink," actually comes from. In 18th century France, growing or eating potatoes was banned for decades. Lawmakers genuinely believed potatoes caused leprosy. On the Greek island of Delos, dyeing was made illegal in the 5th century BC. The island was considered too sacred for death to occur there. Existing graves were even dug up and the bodies removed. Giving birth was also outlawed on Delos for the exact same reason. Both birth and death were considered too impure for the sacred ground. In Western Australia since 1946, it has technically been illegal to possess more than 50 kilograms of potatoes without a license. The law was created after World War II to stop black market food hoarding. In France, until 2013, an old law technically banned women from wearing trousers in Paris, unless they were riding a horse or a bicycle. Nobody enforced it for over a century, but it stayed on the books until it was formally repealed. In several towns across Norway, Japan, and France, dyeing within town limits has been made illegal, not because death itself can be stopped, but because there's no more room left to bury anyone. And under the Code of Hammurabi, almost 4,000 years ago, if you accused someone of a serious crime and couldn't prove it, you were thrown into the river. Drown, and you were guilty. Survive, and the gods had spoken for you.